If you glance at a standard tube map of London today, your eyes will almost always be drawn into North London, i.e. north of the River Thames, because there's just so much happening up there. And yet south of the Thames is quite sparsely served, especially by the tube. However, if you glance at a London Rail and Tube Services map, you'll see a fascinating difference if you're eagle-eyed. You'll notice that north of the Thames is heavily served by TfL services, and yet south of the Thames is heavily served by National Rail services. Together, this difference is filled with history and conspiracy, as the tube is quite sparse in South London, with only 31 tube stations in this area. In this video, we will explore this controversial question. What if the London Underground was extended much further south? There are multiple reasons why the tube is so sparse in South London, with the first and main one being the geology of London overall. You'll notice that on this diagram that central London sits on a bed of clay, but South London sits on a layer of waterlogged sand and gravel, which makes it much harder and more expensive to tunnel through. But with modern tunneling equipment, it is a bit easier. The second reason is population. The population of South London ranges between 1 and 3 million people. Despite South London having a higher total population than North London, it has a much lower population density, being at approximately 4,200 people per square kilometre. This means that there is quite low demand for tube services in this area. However, this isn't a fault, since South London already has a vast network of suburban railway lines, built in the 19th and 20th centuries by these four railway companies, who were amalgamated into the Southern Railway and later the Southern Region of British Railways. So the majority of people who live in this area, including myself, have to rely on national rail trains most of the time to get into central London. The third problem is the lack of connectivity between other modes of the tube. The only transportation system owned by TfL serving the majority of South London is the Croydon tram link. The tram network is quite poorly connected with other modes, especially with the tube, with the majority of its interchanges being with National Rail. And speaking of interchanges, there is only one actual connection between the Underground and the trams, and that is at Wimbledon. There is technically a second connection between the trams and the Underground, but that is an out-of-station interchange between Morden Road and South Wimbledon on the Northern Line. The OSI is not shown on the tramlink carriage maps, but it is surprisingly shown on the Northern Line carriage maps, but they don't announce a connection verse for South Wimbledon. And even the Northern Line tunnels pass beneath the tramlink on the section between South Wimbledon and Morden. The world's first deep-level tube railway was mostly built in South London, running from Stockwell to King William Street in the City of London. However, that station only lasted for a grand total of 10 years, from when it first opened in 1890. There were two extensions to their railway by the turn of the 20th century, one south from Stockwell to Clapham Common, and the other was from Borough to Moorgate, and eventually up to Angel, King's Cross St Pancras, Euston and Camden Town, to amalgamate with the Hampstead Tube, but the most challenging extension was from Clapham Common to Morden. This part of the Northern Line is really the only part of the tube penetrating most of South London, and this makes me feel quite ambivalent to travel on. This extension was built using the Greathead tunnelling shields, invented by James Henry Greathead. This shield back then was actually easier to dig through the gravel, but quite challenging at the same time. The Victoria Line extension from Victoria to Brixton also used Greathead shields for the same reason, but its northern section from Victoria to Walthamstow actually used drum diggers or rotary shields, powered by hydraulic rams that could cut more than 60 feet per day, but the shields are nearly identical to the Great Head shields. However, the Jubilee Line extension from Green Park to Stratford, which also mostly runs in South London, also didn't use Great Head shields, but rather by the new Austrian tunnelling method. This involves spraying concrete as a lining, and this is used in land which has variable soil conditions. The last extension to happen on the network was actually built in South London, from Kennington to Nine Elms in Battersea Power Station, and the tunnels were constructed using tunnel boring machines, which put up concrete pieces divided into segments, and this is what we currently use today. There are only a grand total of 4 actual termini in South London for tube trains, and they are, by most southerly, Morden, Wimbledon, Brixton, and Richmond. Elephant and Castle on the Bakerloo line and Waterloo on the Waterloo and City line are not really termini in South London for tube trains, because they connect with other tube lines at those stations. This sparsity of termini makes me quite upset. For the purposes of this video, I'll be proposing 2 extensions for this video. The first one is an extension of the Northern Line from Morden towards Cheam and Epsom, with an easterly branch from Cheam, which I'll talk about later. But in order to understand this, we need to take a look at the factors of why this extension is a necessity, and the main cause of this is Epsom Station itself. First of all, Epsom Station is a national rail station located north of its town centre, served by Southern and South Western Railway. This station has 4 platforms. However, its arrangement is quite unusual, with its platforms being arranged in a pattern for its operators to use. Platform 1 is used for all Southern trains to Dorking and Horsham from Victoria, and it's also used to turn back trains which had come from London Bridge. Platform 2 is used for all SWR trains heading to Dorking and Guildford. Platform 3 is used for Southern trains to Victoria, and Platform 4 is used for SWR trains to Waterloo. The reason why the platforms are shuffled in this order is because of this diamond crossing here, which southbound SWR and northbound Southern trains cross over within a 2-minute window according to the timetables. And speaking of timetables, this is another factor of the extension. So first, let's pretend that the London Bridge service doesn't exist, and have a look at the Victoria and Waterloo services first. Basically, at the start of the hour, the first train would be a Southern service to Victoria, but approximately 20 minutes later, the next train to London would be the SWR service to Waterloo, and then it alternates between the 2 operators for every single journey, even in the opposite direction. Now let's look at this problem with London Bridge services. With this implemented, Southern and SWR services into London actually cycle between the 3 terminals, so you still have alternation between Victoria and Waterloo, but the main difference is that there is a London Bridge service sandwiched in the middle of the Victoria and Waterloo service gaps. This means that passengers have to plan ahead before they arrive at the station and take the first train heading into London, which can be quite annoying to do. For this reason, I have planned this extension starting from Morden Station. Now, we all know that Morden is the southernmost tube station on the network. However, its record is quite ridiculous because the station is only 8 miles from Charing Cross, and the station is in Zone 4, which is not that far to be honest. And this is another factor why this extension needs to be built. So, let me show you this extension concept that I was able to come up with. So, the Northern Line extension beyond Morden will start at, well, obviously, Morden Station. And this station will be upgraded to allow for this extension to be happening. And you may be wondering, what is this tram line here which I've drawn on this map? But, well, I'll explain what this is all about in a future episode. After Morden, there will be 2 new tracks which will parallel the existing tracks which lead towards the Northern Line depot. another option is to use two of the existing tracks for the new extension. And there will be a new dive site which will be constructed here. But we will have to acquire plenty of property in order to build this new dive site here. And, the first station on the new extension would be Morden South. And this is where passengers can change for national rail trains on the Sutton Loop line. And with this new extension happening, Morden South will have a management change. So currently it is a Thameslink managed station, but if this new extension would be happening, Morden South would change from being a Thameslink managed station to a TfL managed one instead, because there would be more Northern Line services calling here rather than Thameslink services. Because the Thameslink services on the Sutton Loop line between Wimbledon and Sutton has a 30-minute service in each direction, which is quite infrequent. And after Morden South, the line would start to parallel the A24 on its northern side before arriving at its next station, which is Stonecott Hill. And this will be the first station located in the London Borough of Sutton on the new extension. And the reason why I've named it as Stonecott Hill is because the suburb of Lower Morden is unofficially known as Stonecott, and the roads which cross over here, i.e. the A24 and the B279, which cross over each other here, are located on a hill, hence the name, Stonecott Hill. And after Stonecott Hill, the line will continue to parallel the A24, but once it reaches halfway to the next station, the line would then cross under the A24 before running on its parallel on its southern side of the road. And speaking of the next station will be North Cheam, and this will be the junction station for the line. And there is a turnout point here, which I'll explain about now. So this actually has a factor on service patterns. So the two outer platforms, this one here and this one here, would be used for all trains coming to and from Epsom, while the two inner tracks here would be used for all trains heading towards Sutton. And speaking of Sutton, let's talk about this branch line first. So the Sutton branch would leave the Epsom branch here and would head to its next station at Cheam Village. And this will actually provide a much closer option to Cheam Park rather than the current Cheam National Rail station. And despite the stations being a bit quite close to each other, there will not be an out-of-station interchange between the two stations. And after Cheam Village, the new tunnels will start to curve east, and would then cross under the southern line, which heads towards Epsom. The next station would be Sutton, and this is where passengers can change for national rail trains operated by both Thameslink and Southern, as well as an extension of the Croydon tram link which I've proposed, which I'll talk about in a future episode. And after Sutton, the line would become a long straight section of twin tunnels through Carshalton. Unfortunately, there will not be a station in Carshalton for the Northern Line, because there are already a fair amount of stations in the area which have a good service frequency. And the line would just be a long straight section of twin tunnels, but this is where the surprises I have planned. So, after this, the next and final station on this branch line is Central Croydon. That's right, for this proposal, I've decided to finally add Croydon to the underground network. So, that is good news for Croydon businesses and residents. So, the terminal station at Central Croydon will have 3 platforms, and there will be a crossover point here, which will be designed in a scissors form. And the station will have an out-of-station interchange with East Croydon Station on the trams and National Rail. So that is the Northern Line branch from North Cheam, Central Croydon. So now let's take a look at the Epsom branch. So after North Cheam, the line would then leave, the Epsom branch line would leave the Sutton branch to arrive at the first station on this branch at Nonsuch Park. And this is where we actually leave the Greater London boundary, and we also leave the ULEZ zone, which has recently been expanded, although not everyone is happy about it. So the station, Nonsuch Park, is named after the park of the same name. And the station will be a little bit bigger than the other stations on the extension, because there is a park run located here. And the station will be big enough to handle the projected crowds. And after Nonsuch Park, the line would then cross under the A24 a few times, and then the tunnels would actually deviate at the Ewell Castle station here, which is the next station on the line. And the reason why I've arranged the platforms in a Y shape is because just to avoid this symmetry here. And so I've deviated the northbound line to run under this road here, just to avoid noise complaints from tenants and buildings. And Ewell Castle Station is named as such because of Ewell Castle Secondary School, just to get the naming rights. And also the station will serve a events venue known as the Bourne Hall, which is located here. And after Ewell Castle, the next and final stop on this extension will be Epsom. And this is where passengers can change for southwestern and southern services to Dorking, Guildford, and Horsham. And yeah, that is the end of the Northern Line extension from Morden. And the new terminal station at Epsom will have 3 platforms, and one of them will be responsible for Spanish solution boarding. So yeah, that is the Northern Line extension from Morden. However, we're not quite done yet. So let's take a look at how Epsom Station will be if the Northern Line was to come here.
Alright, so if the Northern Line were to be extended to here from Morden, then the passengers would enter the station from there. They would come, enter the gate line, and then walk through here straight, and then this wall here would be knocked through to the new bit, and then passengers would find a PIS showing which platform the first train will depart from. And then once that platform is shown, they'll take escalators and lifts down to the platforms, which I think are 5, 6, 7, and 8, if the Northern Line was meant to be coming here.
There are multiple advantages of this extension. First of all, it would cut journey times more than ever beyond Morden, meaning commuters never need to get off at Morden abruptly and get a bus to continue their journey. This extension would also finally connect North Cheam and Croydon with a tube service for the first time, after an earlier and similar proposal for this extension was dropped in 1946. It would also relieve congestion on the A24, which is already quite a busy road, and it would also finally allow turn-up and go services from Epsom, so passengers will not need to look at NR timetables often. Some disadvantages of the extension is that the A24 is quite hilly in some bits, meaning the tunnels would need to be a bit deeper. And finally, this extension could overwhelm the line due to the high demand of frequent trains. It would make the Northern Line more confusing than ever before, and it would overwork the capacity of trains on the Northern Line. This means that the Northern Line would have to be split into 2 in order for the extension to go ahead. And finally, there is one more thing I want TfL to add to this project.
So, I want TfL to actually add a station in between Tooting Broadway and Collier's Wood, I think known as Tooting Graveny, so that it can interchange with national rail services on Thameslink, on the Sutton Loop line. So, yeah, that would be much more convenient between the Northern Line and Thameslink services.
extension is the Victoria Line to Bromley. Currently, Bromley is served by two national rail stations, Bromley South and Bromley North. The former station has direct services to central London, albeit with large amounts of crowds on board, while the latter station does not, due to the low demand of passenger numbers. The Bakerloo Line extension does have a concept to take that extension further towards Hayes, but since that could be the only tube line to run deep into southeast London, a faster link would be needed. But the biggest gripe for me that's making me want to consider the extension is Brixton Station itself. The reason why is because Brixton is literally a stub off of the Northern Line at Stockwell, and it certainly feels quite pointless to take a tube line one stop away from another tube line. But this is in stark contrast to the Jubilee line between West Ham and Stratford. Since this one is a stub off of the District and Hammersmith and City lines, it does connect to another tube line at Stratford, the Central line. And since it doesn't use this trend at Brixton, and only connects to Brixton's underwhelming National Rail station, is one I hate a lot, so we're going to fix it. So, let me show you my Victoria Line extension concept now. So the new Victoria Line extension to Bromley will start at Brixton, and currently beyond the station are two sidings where two trains are parked up at night. And beyond the sidings' end is where the extension would be dug from. And then, sorry about that. And then the first station on the new extension would be Herne Hill, and this is where passengers can change for national rail services, particularly by Thameslink, who operate services through Loughborough Junction, Elephant and Castle, Blackfriars and beyond. And then after Herne Hill, the new extension would then turn southwest to arrive at the next station, which is Tulse Hill. And this is where passengers can change for national rail services, particularly by Southern, because they operate services from Tulse Hill towards London Bridge. And then after Tulse Hill, the line would then start to swing southeast and would then become a long straight section of twin tunnels until it reaches this turnout point here. And this turnout point actually requires a bit of explanation. And the next station on this line is Crystal Palace. And this is where passengers can change for London Overground, National Rail services, as well as an extension of the Croydon tram link which I've proposed, which I'll talk about in a future episode. Sorry about that. Basically, the reason why there are 4 platforms here is because some of the trains will actually terminate here. And so the 2 outer platforms, so this one here and this one here, would be responsible for all originating and terminating trains. And the middle platforms here would be responsible for all through trains. And I say terminating because they actually originating, so they will be originating from Seven Sisters Station. So my headcanon for this is that trains which had originated at Seven Sisters would arrive into this platform here at Crystal Palace, disgorge its passengers, and would then leave Crystal Palace on its own set of twin tunnels. So the line would then swing above the main line and would then head above ground to arrive at the brand new Annerley Depot, which would be constructed here, right in the middle of this balloon loop here. And this will be the second bit of the Victoria Line, which will be above ground. So my headcanon on this is that trains which are terminated at Crystal Palace would then run empty around this balloon loop and would then re-enter service as a northbound service, heading north as far as Seven Sisters. And as part of this project, Seven Sisters would be remodeled as part of this project. So currently you have this platform here, which is used for all services heading to Walthamstow. You got this platform here, which is used for all terminating services. And you got the existing southbound platform here, which is responsible for all southbound services, obviously. And so as part of this project, the existing southbound platform would be filled in and would actually be moved to the other side of the track.
And a new southbound platform here would be constructed to serve all southbound trains which had come from Walthamstow Central. And the southbound platform, which would be remodeled, would be responsible for all originating trains from the Northumberland Park Depot. So, and speaking of the Northumberland Park Depot, the existing depot here would be remodeled to include a brand new balloon loop, which would be constructed on the fringes of the Northumberland Park Depot. So my headcanon on timetables, let's talk about that. So my headcanon on timetables is that there would be 36 trains per hour running between Seven Sisters and Crystal Palace. 6 of them would terminate at either Seven Sisters or Crystal Palace, depending on what direction they are going in. And the remaining 30 trains would head to the extremities of the Victoria Line, either Walthamstow Central or Bromley Central, again depending on what direction they are going in. So yeah, that is Crystal Palace. So trains for Bromley Central would then leave from the middle platform and would then arrive at the next station a short distance away at Laurel Gate. And the reason why I've named it as Laurel Gate is because there is a linear park nearby of the same name. And this will be the second station on the Victoria Line, which will not connect with anything else, i.e. another tube or rail line. But the station will serve an event venue known as the Melvin Hall. And so, yeah, that is Laurel Gate. So the next station on the new extension would be Beckenham Junction. And this is where passengers can change for National Rail and Croydon Tramlink services. And as part of this new project, the existing Beckenham Junction station would be significantly upgraded. So the existing station building here would be demolished and a new station building would be constructed here, right in the middle of this drop-off bay, and would serve all 3 services. Passengers who enter the station building, if they want to go to the Croydon Tramlink, they would then turn left away from the gate line and would head on their own corridor to head to the Tramlink platforms here. The gate line, which would be constructed here, would be responsible for National Rail and the Victoria Line. And so, yeah, that is Beckenham Junction. And after Beckenham Junction, the next and final station on the new extension would be Bromley Central. And this is where passengers can change for a new extension of the Croydon Tramlink here, which I'll talk about in a future episode. And the station will be large enough to accommodate a bus station here. But we will have to acquire plenty of property in order to build this new interchange. And beyond Bromley Central Victoria Line platforms would be the sidings where 2 trains would be parked up at night. And that is the Victoria Line extension.
Some advantages to this extension concept is that it would finally have a tube link to deep southeast London, and would also finally connect Bromley Town Centre to the underground network. Today at Brixton, the overrun tunnels to the south actually face Herne Hill, providing another big advantage. This new tube extension would also take people off of National Rail, which are already overcrowded at Bromley. The new stations which I propose would have new tiling motifs, which could very well be designed exclusively by Art on the Underground. But some disadvantages is that the rebuilding work at Seven Sisters could egregiously take a really long time to finish. It would also make the Victoria Line congested if we extend it now, not to mention that the Victoria Line has 36 trains per hour, or a train every 100 seconds, during the peak. So we need to adjust the service frequency, meaning we could pick up a train less frequently, but that is for a reason. So, there you go. The extensions which I propose could end up being very auspicious if they get built, but we'll just have to wait and see. Until next time, take care and thanks for watching.